Go South Outdoors is in its 18th season, and over the years, well, as you can imagine, we've had some pretty big fish stories. Not necessarily days with the best fishing, or the biggest fish, or the best hunting. But over time, those stories seem to blend together. Yet on certain days outdoors, something really out of the ordinary happens. And it creates a story that's remembered and told over and over for years.
Go South Outdoors has been on the air for nearly 2 decades, long enough that we think it's time for a change.
During the early years, the show mostly took its viewers on inshore fishing trips, maybe a little offshore, or a hunting trip or two. But over the past 3 years, we've expanded the show quite a bit.
It's true. For starters, the show now airs nationally to over 45 million households 4 times each week. And while we've added more types of outdoor adventures, well, we of course still feature the types of outdoor activities we all enjoy. In fact, we fished inshore with some of the very best, like Sonny Schindler, Captain Ron's Charters, Marcus McDavid,
Lee Wyndham, Britt Ordez, and Chris Barlow,
and many other guys.
Let's see if we can find our outdoors. World record.
I took it and swam off with it, so bad it is like crazy.
Wow, I'm like, and up.
I lied! It's a fish!
Did you get all that? Nice.
When we return, we'll take you back to one of the biggest catches I've ever had, and the biggest on the show.
Stay tuned.
You may recall the episode in which we featured my big blue marlin. I fought it for 3 hours after it got tail wrapped and then finally sank to the bottom in 700 feet of water. But we did manage to get it up on 50-pound test line.
I'm telling you, it was tough. It was some 95 degrees out there, not a breath of wind.
But with what was going to happen on this trip, a cool breeze would have been welcomed.
And that fish was determined not to come to the boat.
At a minimum, we got a caught fish.
Cameras on?
Cameras are on.
This day of fishing started great because not long after the baits were in the water, the first blue marlin of the day was hooked up and Brittany was in the fighting chair doing battle with what appeared to be a big fish. After a long back and forth struggle,
I don't want the next one.
Oh, you're not getting the next one. You're doing good, baby. Just keep it on him. Don't let him get any slack. You're doing great. You're almost there, babe. He's a nice fish.
We'd already hooked up 2 blue marlin, which is extraordinary for any trip in the Gulf. And then the third fish came up in the spread. I was lucky enough to happen to be looking out when it came through the spread and saw the fish lit up, and I knew right away it was a good sized fish. After making her way through the spread and attacking practically every bait we had out, she finally got hooked up on the center rigger, and then the fight was on.
Good fish. It's coming to you. It's probably got a bow in the line.
Taking line now.
The fish began to greyhound away from us, and our mate Stephen Coolgis was yelling at Eric to back down because the fish was in the process of trying to spool us.
Go get him.
He's taking line.
He's steadily dumping it.
About the time that Eric got backing down good, the fish decided it didn't like going that direction and turned around and went the other direction, at which time Stephen began yelling at Eric to put the boat in forward, that the fish was coming back on us and we were afraid we'd get slack and lose the fish.
Reel, go, Eric, go! It's coming at us, go forward!
while this big blue marlin was running straight at Vixen, I kept the slack out of the line and didn't lose the fish. But something did happen when this fish made the abrupt turn that would set the course of events for the rest of the day.
Fought the fish for the next hour and a half. She got the fish up a couple times, and Stephen was getting ready to wire it when the fish made another run.
Reel, go, Eric, go!
At the time we weren't certain, but about halfway into the fight, at about an hour and a half, we were in some 700 feet of water, and the fish began going straight down. I thought at first the fish was sounding, but later we figured out that what had happened, it had become tail wrapped, and unfortunately it died. And finally it came to rest on the bottom. We quit taking line at that point, and we figured out what had happened. It's difficult to get a dead fish of that size. We're talking 600 to 700 pounds up off the bottom, even with an 80 wide with 80-pound test. We were fishing with 50 wides with 50-pound test, and it was extraordinarily difficult. That was the first time in which I thought, we're not going to get this fish up. We might as well go ahead and cut it off. With the drag all the way to the stops and holding the spool with both of my thumbs as hard as I could, Eric would bump the boat ahead until I couldn't hold it any longer. Then we'd back down and reel back down on the fish. We did that for the next hour and a half until finally the fish basically popped to the surface.
Somebody get a camera and take a bunch of pictures.
One thing about offshore fishing is you never know what to expect.
That's right. You never know what you're gonna get.
We'll be right back.
Rolling, Andrew?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'll get that gap out. And another couple with him. There was 3.
Welcome back to Go South Outdoors. Well, we've shown you some of our adventures on the water, but some of my favorite throughout the shows have taken place, well, under the water.
We have had the opportunity to dive in some pretty cool places, and we've seen some really amazing things.
That we have, but one of my most memorable trips took place on our adventures in Cuba. I think you remember that one. I think you made a little friend there, didn't you?
You must be talking about After 10 or 15 minutes, this 9-foot-long crocodile comes swimming toward us from the mangroves.
I figured this was a routine part of the trip, so I slipped into the water to get some video up close and personal. But I noticed I was the first and the only one in the water. I began having second thoughts. My concern quickly faded as the other fools, divers, joined me. I figured that with them in the water, my odds were reduced for ending up as Nino's dinner, should he decide to go off script.
Obviously, I couldn't be outdone by my dad, and also, he would never let me live it down if I didn't get in the water. So I decided not to let the opportunity slip through my fingers, and into the water I went with this giant dinosaur of a crocodile.
Well, diving with Nino was an incredible experience. Hated to see him go, but I loved watching him leave. Now, if you thought being in the water with a giant croc could get your blood pumping, that was nothing compared to
One of the high points of the dive was sharing the waters with lots of 8 to 10 foot long Caribbean reef and silky sharks. They were everywhere.
I've dove with sharks a number of times, such as nurse sharks, small reef and white and black tip sharks, but never in these numbers, and certainly not in this size.
The sharks appeared comfortable around us, but it took me a little while. I know that our dive team leaders have dove with these sharks a number of times, but they were still very large creatures with a mouth chock full of razor-sharp teeth. There was no question that if they chose to, they could have cut a swath straight through our group in no time.
Gradually, we relaxed and felt more comfortable with them. One came so close, I could touch it. Now that was a little weird. I have to say that once we got used to it, it truly was a beautiful experience watching them swim around us in the wild like this.
For such large creatures, it's amazing how graceful they are. But still, when you look directly in that eye,
Well into one of our dives, I noticed one shark in particular exhibiting aggressive behavior. Generally, before attacking, sharks will begin to circle, and that's just what this one was doing, right around my good friend, David. Stay tuned to Go South Outdoors.
we'll be right back right after this.
Tim Bennett here, Overtime Sports. Hey, it's been a great championship so far. 3 days out of the way, and we're coming into the final stretch. The championship game is this Sunday at 1 o'clock at MGM Park. Tickets are available. You can purchase at mgmparkbiloxi.com, or you can purchase at the South Box office. Again, that game is at 1 o'clock, championship game, Sunday, MGM Park. See you there.
Welcome back to Gulf South Outdoors.
Wait, I really wasn't tuned to what we were doing. But, okay, never mind.
Welcome back to Gulf South Outdoors.
Although we're seasoned professionals in the field of broadcast, sometimes, even occasionally, we have our moments. I don't know if we said that right. Is that your line?
No, that was yours. I have little doubt that he won't do the same thing. This week,
You started out strong.
we've been to Panica. We've been to Panama. So we're at Los Sueños this week. Great fun, great fishing, great weather, and great camaraderie. Join us.
Okay. Camaraderie.
I'm sorry.
He snipped. Anyway. Well, so far Marcus had caught a bunch of... Stop it!
Welcome to Gulf South Welcome to this week's Gulf South Outdoors. This week we're joined by... Welcome to Gulf South Outdoors. This week we're joined by the Deepwater Mafia. We're fishing the lionfish category of Marty Wilson's Croaker Classic. They're out to dominate it.
Okay.
What happened? I got it.
Well, first of all, good morning, Frank. I'm very happy to be here this year, and very anxious to report to you that yesterday was the day...
We'll have to start over. I'm sorry. Harrison's ruined that take. Okay, ready? Take two.
So it's now come to my attention that Frank Willem has claimed that somehow or another the reason that a sailfish was not landed was connected to the chest hairs on my body.
You know, we spent all this time, wasted good redfish time, for him to put his boots on, and now he's over there taking them off.
Go ahead, I'll catch up with you.
Stay tuned to South Gulf Outdoors.
We'll be right back. You may have noticed another change. Over the years, we've had the good fortune to meet a lot of professionals as well as avid outdoorsmen who really know their stuff and routinely have some pretty exciting adventures. So we've begun to highlight some of their adventures on the show.
That's right. With our clip of the week and submissions from our promo team, we've broadened the scope of what we do.
We sure have. And our new studio-based format makes it easy to host members of our charter team, professional guides, and well, you.
That's right. We want to showcase your adventures, so much so that this fall, we're changing the name of the show to Find Your Outdoors.
While Brittany and I still plan to include you on our trips, like diving in Cuba or bill fishing in Central America, we're shifting the focus to include a wider array of adventures with a lot more outdoor folks.
And we'd love for you to share some of your pictures and videos with us so that we can share them with our folks on social media and maybe even a segment or an entire episode of the show. Go to our website at findyouroutdoors.org for more information.
We'll have a whole bunch of fun episodes to watch over the summer, but this fall, tune in to Find Your Outdoors right here.
Bye.